episode 2 of Pad the Meters podcast. Today, I happen to be joined by someone that you may know, Zach, who happens to be stuck in a time loop of WoD PvP years. How we doing, Zach?
I'm good, man. Thanks.
I'm also joined with Loki, the leader, even when he's not the leader, and makes you feel like shit. Loki, how you doing today, sir?
Great.
And I, of course, am your host, Zarthe, host of the podcast and guild leader of now Pad the Meters. How you doing today, gentlemen?
Not too bad, man.
Good. You?
You know, I can't really complain. A lot happened this past week, so there's a lot to go over this week. A lot happened. There was a lot, especially in the past 72 hours. I want to say it was like 72 hours. A lot transpired. So let's get into that before we get into anything else. I know I usually like to go into the week of WoW, but let's get into that. So for those of you who don't know, we transferred our guild, and I think almost all the guildies as well, to Horde. So now we are a Horde guild on Tichondrius. We have a community now with Misfit Mayhem, which Loki is one of the leaders to that. And it was made possible by a donor named Zillidan, who brought us all over and pretty much bankrolled us to come over to Horde side. So it's pretty awesome now that we have this community now, which is weird because it's a mix of two guilds that I think it's become very well. I don't know. What do you guys think so far?
Yeah, so I actually, I think that kind of community is really important to the game. And back in like Burning Crusade, I did the same thing with the guild that I had when I played on Blade Fist, and that guild is actually still going, and that fostered like some relationships that I have even outside the game, like people that I talk to that have quit the game that I still stay in touch with. So I think that kind of community is really important, really good way to like keep the game alive and just like build these strong connections with other people that, you know, share the same passions that we do. I think it's a really awesome idea.
Yeah. How has it been for you, Loki?
It's better to have more people to play with now.
Now you're shoehorned to playing a paladin over on Alliance.
Hey, my paladin was great.
Still is great.
Yeah, I can't lie. Your paladin is pretty amazing. But I am really happy to now play with your mage and see what your mage can do. It's been pretty awesome.
20k DPS apparently.
It's so stupid.
And one shot an entire floor of Torghast.
Oh, that's yeah.
I am a little bit ashamed that I had to betray the Alliance, though. But
you know, I feel a lot cleaner now being Horde. I feel so much cleaner.
That's ironic because they don't even have showers on the Horde.
I believe Blood Elves would.
Maybe so.
But no, it's been pretty awesome now that we have a wider community to actually play with. We did a raid, which we'll get into the raid later, but we did a raid that was mostly guild members. We literally only had to pug 2 people to make it a full raid. So that in itself is pretty awesome. But before we get into everything else, let's start off with the week in WoW. What did you do this week, Zach?
So this week I'm still I'm slowly coming back after, you know, what I said last week. I was taking a little bit of time, like taking a step back to like do some other stuff. I ended up getting Cyberpunk, so I played a little bit of Cyberpunk, and kind of came back midway through the week. I haven't been on the Demon Hunter, which was my main on Alliance.
Yeah.
I brought my Warlock over, actually. I thought that might be, since I wasn't tanking, that might be a little bit more useful tool for the raid, bringing the Warlock over. And now I'm actually leveling up a Boomkin. So I have a little bit of flexibility in casters for our groups, you know. So if we decide
now,
we need one or the
I
other.
did realize that you had brought something over. I just didn't know what it was. I thought you just literally brought a portal maker over, and I didn't know that was a class. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, and I bake cookies. That's
You bake cookies and you
and
kill people
sometimes
with a doom guard.
yes, and sometimes when we need portals, I just bring out cookies instead. So it just depends on how I'm feeling.
So okay, so you're playing a couple new classes. You brought your warlock over, and that's nice.
Yeah,
Loki,
yeah,
how did your week
good.
been? What have you been up to?
Good. I tried to push some pretty high keys and didn't do too well.
Yeah, I
Missed
heard
a
about that.
missed a 15 play fall by 17 seconds.
Oh,
Oof.
I know that pain. Not a 15, God no, but I know the pain of missing it about a few seconds. What happened?
There was some sloppy parts to it, but mostly the thing that really ended it was spiderling spawning and pulling an extra pack.
Oh,
Something we really couldn't control.
yeah.
Mm,
Dang, that
Yeah,
does suck. Now you were trying for the realm first or something like that, right?
Yeah, I believe they were saying that was going to be server first. I don't think anyone's done it yet
So
on
you
this
still have a
server.
chance.
I don't know.
No, that's awesome. I
As
wish I was doing something like that.
yeah. There's that 17 seconds is painful, man. That's like one mistake by any one of the characters,
Yeah,
and
that's anything. That's even
that's
like
yeah,
what, 2 deaths?
yeah,
yeah,
or
something like that.
yeah.
Yeah, dang, that's for me, yeah, this week consisted of having the heartache of being number 3 shaman on on Alliance Tichondrius to becoming ranked 142 on Tichondrius Horde. So it hurt. I thought I was doing well until I went to the other side. But to my credit, I looked at the number 1 Raider IO on the for the Horde, and he happens to be number 32 in the world. So I was like, okay, that's not bad.
Now you know what it feels like to be the rank one rogue from Argent Dawn.
Ah, yes, big fish.
You might be rank one here, but when you go somewhere else, you're just there.
You're just
It's
Steve at
like
that point.
yeah, you are just Steve.
No, but on top of that, I did mythics. I've been pushing a little bit more keys. I think I pushed an 11. We timed an 11. I believe it was the other side. Was it the other side? I think it was the
Oh,
other
that's
side that
progress. Yeah.
timed. So that was really awesome. Other than
What do you
that,
think
was
about the affixes this week?
I haven't actually looked at the fixes. What, this coming week or the one that we just
No,
passed?
this past.
It hurt being a healer. Looking at it, I wasn't okay. So I didn't really push mythics last expansion, so I'm not familiar with a lot of them. Coming into this one, I realized there's not a lot of downtime for me to damage with Grievous. And
Yeah.
it's constantly trying to keep the team up just to stop the dot from ticking. And the other
Oh,
things didn't do too bad. I know the one affix Loki. What's the affix where you kill a mob and it spawns the ghost?
spiteful. Spiteful.
Spiteful. So spiteful, that's bad for her melee. Like, I realized I was in groups where I didn't even want melee in them because it was more than likely they were not going to move out and just get 2 slapped.
Oh, it does seem like the range on them is further than it should be,
Oh,
and
really?
especially in smaller areas like Sanguine Depths or the platforms in theater. Makes
Yeah,
kiting them
I could
very
definitely
hard.
see those platforms being problematic.
What I did do to combat it is I went with Earth Grab Totem, and immediately as mobs start dying, I just threw Earth Grab Totem down and just forgot about the pack at that point.
So any tips for melee that might be going into that? Because I know one of the struggles that I had as my Havoc Demon Hunter is one, not only the competition, but two, is there are a lot of people that are just thinking that it's or that have the feeling, and I think it's evident that this is a fairly melee unfriendly expansion right now. So any tips for melee on how to like maybe handle some of that, either Loki or Zarthe?
Uh, well, you only have to worry about the big red one because that's the only one fixating you. If you're talking about spiteful specifically, so just stun it or just back out. for a minute.
Now, do you back out as the ads are dying, or do you have a little buffer time before they fixate?
You have I think you get the fixate before it shows up entirely. I'm not
Okay.
certain. But the problem is they don't spawn directly on the corpse. They spawn somewhere nearby, so they could be behind you even.
I didn't even realize that they spawn nearby. I think
Nearby
for
the
me,
mob
it's
that died.
always like I just throw down my totem and I back up. I don't even realize if I am fixated just because I try to root them and just walk away.
Yeah, and that's really rough when you're in places like those platforms in Theater of Pain, where you really don't have
yeah.
much room. You've really got to be on it with those CCs and movement, which really limits melee, because you start to run into a pretty significant loss of DPS. Whereas, casters, they can move. Mages might blink. Boomies will do boomy things like
They'll disengage
jumping
into their healer.
Yeah, that's where I was going with that.
We'll get into that. Don't worry. We'll get into that.
Yeah, but there's a complete loss in DPS, especially with a class like, and everything that I say for melee is coming from a Havoc Demon Hunter perspective, where if you stop, even if you're specced into their bleed from, I think it's Trail of Ruin as a talent, even if you're specced into that, you still lose almost all DPS if your I-beam is not up, and then I-beam causes you to be immobile anyways.
What have been your problems with these affixes, Loki, this week?
Well, Shade just seems like it takes a bit of time, especially in areas where you can't use portals or talk to angels while they're up because you're in combat. So you have to sit there and finish killing them.
That's been my biggest issue. Is there have already been that not enough downtime to let me drink before we pull, and now I have to wait even longer with the spitefuls up in order just to try to grab some pomegranates.
It's also entirely busted in Necrotic Wake because, for the same reason you were saying, in the third boss, with clearing up to him,
Yeah,
since those ads are like a gauntlet, essentially, or they'll keep coming.
Yes.
By the time the shades have spawned and been killed, the next set is already aggroed.
Yep. And there's just certain times that, especially with how heavy the healing is this week, that you're needing to find that time to drink. And so I found myself relying more on the potions of spiritual clarity along with my mana tide just to try to get some mana back.
Yeah, and I think you brought up the point last week, actually, where you said that sometimes, I don't remember if it was on the podcast or if we were just talking about it in chat, but you said something along the lines of like, sometimes you get a key and then you just feel like, okay, well, that key's just going to sit there this week.
Yes.
Because
I think that's how we felt about last week, where Loki had gotten a 10 Sanguine Depths, and we looked at it and just didn't want to run it.
Exactly, yeah. Some of them are just really, really either difficult or, with the current state, borderline unplayable. I won't say that they're completely unplayable, because there are people out there that have done all of them on.
Yeah, I mean, there are people that have done 15s and 16s of every dungeon. So
yeah, but it would be completely crazy of me to say that they're not all the same difficulty.
I would agree with that.
They are all the same difficulty. And that kind of brings me to one of the points that I wanted to bring up, and Loki can tap into this too, because he's been tanking some. I've seen a lot of comments on tanks having to kite, where basically they're just, instead of tanking in the traditional sense, where your job is to just run into all these mobs and just take all the damage for your team, now they've turned into kind of
ranged
a ranged threat generator.
Yeah, I've seen that on Reddit.
Don't like that. Yeah, and so here's my thought on that real quick, and then I'll let y'all chime in too, because I'm interested. I think that right now we're pushing for the item level that's in the game available, that's attainable. I think we're pushing really high keys already, and the result of that is having to play outside of the traditional like walls of the game mechanics. You have to like kind of find ways to make it work. It's like, what do you guys think about that? What do you think
I want to touch on this before Loki gets into this, because I know, especially what you just brought up, I know Loki has a lot on that.
Mhm.
And it's mostly so you brought up the point of playing outside of the mechanic. And for me, I see where you're coming with that. And it does make a lot of sense because the damage we're taking to the gear that we have isn't scaling to the point because we don't have the gear. So now we're just
Yeah.
being just demolished. But there are many times that I've been playing with Loki where he's completely skipped mechanics just by kiting mobs. And so I kind of want him to touch on that more than I have. I just wanted just a little bit of talking.
Sure. Sure.
It does seem like the damage is a bit spikier than before, but people have always been having to kite higher keys, so it's probably just an item level thing at this point.
Yeah, and I think too that like one thing that people don't consider is you can't think of a plus 15 as being something that you want to be attainable by everybody. Um, Especially at this point in the meta. And when people start pushing like plus 30s again, like they were in BFA, if we get to
Oh,
that point, like that's not something that every single player in the game is going to be able to get to or is even going to want to get to. Because the game changes as the difficulty changes.
well, I think that's why they also capped the gear at 15s. Because at that point,
Yes.
no matter what you do, you're not going to get higher gear than at a 15.
Yeah, and people like Rex Troy are a perfect example of what I'm saying. Is like
Yeah.
there's so many mechanics in this game and there's so many forces at play that it's almost certain that there's going to be some sort of workaround. There's going to be somebody that can find a loophole somewhere. And it's from a developer perspective, like you can't make tanks so strong that they could just face tank a plus 20 in the
Yes.
fifth week of the
Because then
expansion.
it negates every other piece of content they have out.
Yeah, because then all of a sudden it takes your mythic zeros from being baseline to your plus 15s being baseline, and then everybody's running around in plus 15s, and then it's like this never-ending cycle.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think there are a lot of complaints. I brought it up last week with Torghast, where I was saying that people are upset that they're, with that nerf that happened, they were upset that plus 7 Torghast was so difficult. But it's like, okay, we're in the fourth week of the expansion. Do you want all 8 floors of Torghast to be trivial? Or do you want there
But
to be a
I think
challenge?
last week
And
we
it's the
definitely
same thing
brought
with
up a
Mythic
point
Plus.
about that was mostly that they're going to have a hard mode of Torghast. So
Yep.
let Torghast be Mythic 0. And
Yes.
then let I forgot what it's called already.
To say
Uh
corridors.
yeah, there you go. Let that be your Mythic Plus of it.
Yeah, I agree.
Do you have anything else to touch on that one, Loki?
On Torghast.
On the kiting mobs and things like that.
Oh, no, it all seems pretty normal at this point in expansion. You you just can't stand there and take it. You're supposed to coordinate CCs and knockbacks and all that to actually get up to high keys.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think like the last thing I have on that, I did see an unfortunate. There was a plus 15 that was being run. I think it was the second week of the expansion. When I was watching it, it was a death or a demon hunter tank, and I think the auto attacks are rough because like this demon hunter literally leapt when he was kiting, and he leapt near the mobs, so he like passed them in the air, and 2 of the auto attacks just happened to hit him at the same time, and it one shot him.
Oh.
Yeah,
While he was in the air, he was like waiting for his cooldowns to come back up, and it just was a bad RNG basically.
you really have to have your cooldowns going into the pack rather than during the pack at this
Yeah,
point.
I am noticing certain tanks I want to bring into mythics and certain ones I don't just because of the healing that's needed, and some are more spiky than others. And especially certain dungeons that I'd rather have, like, say, a paladin tank just to help me with the healing.
and so as a healer, since I've been out of Mythic Plus, have you seen either you or Loki? Have you guys seen more variation in tanks, or are you still seeing like a ton of the demon hunters and pallies?
So my perspective, I literally just ran a dungeon with my first warrior tank. I think 2 days ago, 2 or 3 days ago. First warrior tank I'm seeing. For the most part, I'm running with brewmasters, bears, and paladins. Every so often, I'll run with a demon hunter, but I don't pick them usually, even though they're more of a meta. I've had a lot of bad experiences with bad demon hunters, especially being pugging.
Yeah. So on that note, with demon hunters, if there's anybody listening that has an interest in playing demon hunters, this is a very, very like broad kind of tip, but the idea behind demon hunter is to try and manage your defensives so that there is always one defensive up at any given time. Like you really, this is just for trash mobs, by the way. You don't want to like stack your defensives. You want to like time them so that there's no overlap between them, but that they butt right up to each other. So like you want to spikes, you know, and keep spikes up, because as soon as your defensives fall off as a demon hunter, you're pretty much dead in hierarchies. If you're within range. So yeah,
Loki,
and I think that's what makes it kind of difficult.
What have you noticed with the tanks, especially on your mage?
In those hierarchies, you just see a bunch of demon hunters list immediately. Not so much the other classes, but I did have prop paladin tank and vengeance tanks,
Okay.
but I haven't seen anyone else.
Really?
At least they weren't invited.
Yeah, I have not seen a single warrior tank actually, which is interesting because they
were amazing last expansion.
Yeah.
I did see a statistic though. It was I think it was this morning, and it was showing the breakdown of the different tanks, and it's skewed, of course, still, but it's skewed, of course, to demon hunters. Following though, growing in popularity is prop pallies. They're really growing in popularities, and then after that, it's actually bear tanks.
Yeah, and I think the big thing that you have to consider with that is that a lot of players, and I'm guilty of this as well. I always tell people like play what you think is fun, and then I go around and do the opposite, right? Sometimes, but
I tell people that, and I stuck as a resto shaman.
Yeah, but there are a lot of people that like will look at the leaderboards and they'll say, "Oh, it's all demon hunters. That means demon hunters are the best."
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, like you're like, let's say your skill level is maxed at like a plus 15, like that's the peak of your skill level, which is like 15's good.
Yeah, that's not bad. That's not.
I'm going to say this, I could be wrong, but I think that every tank with the right team is capable of tanking 15s.
Yeah,
every
I would agree.
is capable of being efficient in a plus 15. Does that mean they're all as easy as the others? Not necessarily, but at no point I think should people like just look at the leaderboards and only play what's on the leaderboards, because there will be buffs, there will be nerfs, class meta will change, and they're all capable of probably doing what most people's skill level can handle.
The only issue with that is that people inviting are tending only to pick the meta classes.
Yeah, I'm guilty of that.
I agree.
I am definitely guilty of that.
As a Havoc demon hunter, I feel that. I feel that hard.
So I think we touched on this last week. Is I tend to skew more towards hunters, boomies, rogues, unholy DKs, and I always skew a lot more towards those. Even mages. If more likely, if you're a range, I will pick you over melee.
Yep, and that is one of the other forces that affects, I think, people's choices in classes. I know it affected mine because it's like I had to tank to get into groups when the guild wasn't online.
Yeah.
I was forced into tanking because there was so much competition. I can't prove that it was people choosing only the meta. I mean, there's no way to prove that, and it could be, it could not, you know. But the fact is that it was extremely hard to get into groups, whether these people were turning me down because of item level or because of my class, who knows. But the point is that there were a lot of DPS queuing for dungeons at any given time.
All right. Anyone else have anything to talk about on this topic? I'm going to move us along on this one.
Yep.
Because I know we've kind of spent a lot of time. We've skipped overhead to mythics.
Yeah.
So to finish up with the week in WoW, where we were, gentlemen. What's your goal for this coming week? What are you looking to do this coming week?
Yeah, same thing as usual. Mythics and now probably raid.
Are you looking to push like a 15s?
I don't know.
I know from
But
go
if
ahead,
it's tyrannical, probably not.
Okay.
You don't push on tyrannical weeks.
Refresh my memory. What's tyrannical do?
Boss are harder.
Okay, yeah.
So it can make it really difficult.
Yeah, I could see
that's
that.
the key, of course. But trash is usually, or fortified is usually easier to push, depending on the other fixes.
Okay. How about you, Zach?
So this coming week, I think I'm gonna spend some time like probably gearing up my druid, and the warlock as well. For our raid, I'd like to see us do as well this coming week, as we did this week.
This week, I'd
So
like
I
to say
think-
we did pretty awesome.
We did, yeah. It was a good raid. Honestly, it took a little bit longer than it should have, just because of what we said with with the one guy that wiped us. That was a wipe that should not.
Oh
happen.
God, yeah. We'll get into that here in a bit.
Yeah, but I was really happy with how well the guild did. I didn't realize that we had done so much. I didn't realize we had done so much content, but I'd also like to see, that interaction with Misfits as well, using that community tab. I'm kind of excited to see where that goes, and
I'm really excited to see where it comes this coming week, especially with Mythics and just pushing normal everyday things.
yeah,
That's really exciting for me to see.
yeah. So I'm gonna spend some time, I think, trying to do some content with some of those people as well.
That's it. They'll do content
Even if it's
with
like
you.
normals or BGs. I do. I'm sorry, I didn't hear that one.
I said that's if they want to do content with you.
Yeah, I gotta bribe them or something.
Yeah, I already told them all not to join your groups if they want to succeed.
I have. Well, I don't have anything really. But,
No, you don't. You don't have anything to offer, sir.
but I'll be nice. I'll be nice to them. I can give them that. But yeah, I do. I kind of want to get into some more PvP. I don't know that I want to do rated content right now on PvP. I don't know if my brain is ready for the toxicity that typically manifests itself.
I do want to jump into that now that you're talking about it.
Sure.
So I got invited to a group a couple days ago. I declined it because I was busy doing other things. It happened to be the same time we were doing the guild transfers and everything, and it was to do an RBG. My buddy told me, "Hey, come do this RBG. I know you used to do PvP. You have to get 1800, and you're able to get 2200 gear." And that immediately dropped me. He was basically just like, "There's no point of doing really anything else at this point. Get that 1800." Because
Do you mean
Zach,
220 gear?
Yeah, 220 gear. I don't know what
Okay.
I was saying. But between me and you, we know it's actually not hard to get 1800. 1800 is very reasonable to get.
Yeah.
How do you feel about 220 gear coming from that?
So I think my opinions are going to change on this depending on how many people do this. Because right now, I think that RBGs particularly need something to draw people in. And if that means making gear easy to acquire, I'm going to go out and say that I think that's good, because maybe that will draw people into RBGs. Now, in a week, I might change, because if a bunch of people do that and then they get their gear and then they just leave, that's very possible that would happen.
Which I feel like that's going to be the case.
Yeah, then I don't know that would be a good thing. But I would be very happy to see an active RBG community, because in WoD, when I was pushing RBGs, it was active, but the higher you got, the more frequently you saw the same people.
Which was a common thing in MOP as well, back when Balamos was running his groups.
Yeah, and it's common in competitive scenes everywhere. There are fewer people that are willing to put in the time, and there are fewer people that are skilled enough to get to the higher end content. So naturally, it's like climbing a pyramid. As you get closer to the top, it gets smaller and smaller. And I think that's fine, but I don't like when you're at a lower rating and you just either wait for an hour to get into a queue, or you just don't see teams queuing. And I think giving people a reason to do that would be great. I think that'd be good for the community.
Do you have an opinion on this, Loki?
My opinion's pretty much the same as it's always been. I feel like PvP and PvE gear should be separate, in that PvEers shouldn't have to PvP to get the best gear, or PvEers, whatever I
Right.
said.
Yeah, I get where you're
Because
going.
like I need to do that to get the trinket.
Oh yeah, that's right.
The alacrity.
Nah, the badge, the unused.
Oh,
one.
okay, the on-use one,
Gotcha.
the boost, the main stat. I think it is. It's a main stat.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
I mean, we could
I
always go
agree.
back in the day of, I want to say it was Mop with PvP power and then PvP resilience, where no matter if you had gear from PvE, if you came into PvP, you would get smacked down.
Yeah, and it's really, I think from a developer standpoint, it's really hard, no matter what anybody says, because there are always people that say that like this expansion did it the best or whatever, but it never
Yeah.
comes without its own problems. So when you have things like resilience, what that presents is as you move forward in an expansion, that widens the gap
That
between
barrier of entry becomes higher
Yes.
and higher.
feels really great for the people who put in the time, feels really bad for the people who are trying to put in the time. And what's hard is that you have two communities. You have the people who started early and got ahead, and good for them. And you have the people who maybe for who knows what reason couldn't get in at the opening, and then
Yeah.
they're screwed. And I think the fix is not necessarily making it. I forgot where I was going with that, but like you don't want to like bar people from content the farther on in an expansion you go, and that's the problem you have with gear progression. Naturally, that's what naturally happens, and I don't know that there's a way to fix that.
Well, here's my feeling for PvP and gear is I feel like say take like a game like Overwatch, for example. When you go in, you have the same ability to the same amount of damage and healing and whatnot. I feel like in PvP, since it's player versus player, it should be entirely based on their skill. So if somebody's fresh 60 and they do everything right, they should easily kill somebody who's doing everything wrong in full gear.
So my question with that one is then, for people that want to get into it, would it then be cosmetics they're getting instead of gear because everyone wants to feel stronger? That's kind of like the fantasy of it, right?
Yeah, I suppose.
Yeah.
But isn't that pretty much what you're doing it for when you're getting to Glad and stuff? Isn't that pretty much already what you're doing for?
Yeah, I mean at that point it's for the gear, what it looks like, or the mount.
What do you think of like a brawl where, because the brawls I feel like are kind of Blizzard's way of experimenting and like kind of mixing up the PvP scene. What about a brawl where everybody was set to the exact same gear, like they had mirrored gear, and that would really put your skill level to the test. Everyone's item level was exactly the same. Everyone had their, their biz stats or whatever for their class, and then you go
But
in.
I think that's
on
where
an
you come
even
into an
playing
issue,
field.
because I know during what expansion was that where they had they would put your stats for you depending on your item level. That was your gear.
Yes,
And so you could no longer say, if I was running Shadow Priest, I wanted to be a mastery build, not a haste build, but they gave me a haste build instead.
Yeah. Yeah, and I agree. That's why I said, just as a brawl, because my initial thought is like, oh, rated, you just smack on all the same gear for everyone, and then you make it skill based, where it's only skill based, sort of like challenge rifts in Diablo 3, right?
Yeah.
You just, here's your build, go see who could do the best with it.
Now, I think
And
on a
typically they're
twist on
not
that, what I
optimized.
would like to see is kind of exactly what Loki said, but with the added factor of what do you want your stats to be? Do you want to be a mastery build, and then we'll build around that? Do you want to be a haste build, a crit build? Like, what do you want
Mhm.
to be? And I think that would at least put some type of spin on it, so you're not cookie cutter to everyone.
Yeah,
You can kind
I
of
think that would
have
be
the
cool.
class built to how you want it.
Give your players the choice of, okay, what do you want to do with this build, and then put them all in with the same level of
Yeah,
stats. I think that'd be a cool brawl. That would be a nice twist. That being said, I think there are players that are going to rage about it if they did something like that.
no matter what you
The
did in
players
this
that were
game,
strong, they
regardless if
would
you
say,
did
"Oh,
something
well,
or not, they're gonna rage.
yeah, they'd be like, oh, they trivialized my progression, or
Yeah.
noobs
Which at the
shouldn't
same
be able
time,
to
you
do
can't
things."
discount their voice either, because
True.
at the
Yeah,
same time they
definitely.
have a point.
And I would feel the same way probably. Like if I was 2200 and in full like 220 PvP gear, I'd be pissed.
Yeah.
I would be. That being said, if it's a brawl, like you can queue for it or you can pass it, or it's whatever. But
Yeah.
if they did that for any kind of like mainstream content, that would suck for sure. But I do overall, I agree with Loki's comments on PvP should be skill based, and I do think that those who progress in the highest level of content for whatever they play, PvP or PvP or PvE, they should be rewarded for that.
Yeah. I agree. I agree. Like in some facet. Has to be
Mm-hmm.
some sort of facet, regardless if it's mount, if it's cosmetic. I remember back in the day, it was always about getting your bloody weapon. That's what you wanted. You wanted the
Yeah.
bloody weapon.
Yep.
But
Yeah.
all right, I think we're kind of good on PvP. Do you guys have anything
Mm-hmm.
else to talk about it? I know we're not really big PvPers as of late. We haven't been.
Yeah, like the last thing that I'll say on that is that it never feels good to have people that press in one form of content like PvE come in and completely destroy someone that puts their time in to other content just because their gear is better.
Yes.
The perfect example, and we always say it, is corruption. Like
Yeah.
you go, you raid, and then you come in and one shot me with your corruption, and I'm in full PvP.
Yeah. We had a long talk about that, I think, the other day.
Yeah. So that's my last comment on the PvP section of things.
So, who had the joy of watching the world first race?
I didn't. I heard about it. That was
Honestly, I heard about it. I didn't watch it. Loki, did you end up watching it?
I tuned in a little bit on the final boss. Zill would probably be able to tell you more. But
Good thing we don't have Zill here.
I've never been really big on following world first. That's not really been my thing. Tons of respect for the people that do it, but my mind kind of changed on that when I started thinking about how some of these people have had access in beta, and they've been playing this for months before the world first actually even happens. Not that it trivializes the content at all, but I think that that restricts the people who have a chance at getting it at all. I'm not too crazy about that, honestly. It's like whoever got to play it in beta and whoever, basically experienced these fights before they ever even came out.
Right. I mean, we all know that my beta access key. We all knew about that one. The one that never came.
And the one that I got, 2 weeks before the game was supposed to release.
Never got to see it. I know Loki got it pretty early.
yeah.
Did you play it much when it was in beta?
Nothing major.
Yeah, I got my beta key in pre-patch, and at that point, I was worried about doing pre-patch stuff. So I literally logged about an hour in beta, and then of course they delayed the game. Had I known that it was going to be delayed, I probably would have put some more time in beta. But yeah, at that point, it was like a week, maybe 2 weeks before the game went live that I got beta, and I was like, what's the point of playing beta now? Because the stuff that I wanted to test out is already gone live in the game.
Yeah.
With that being said, I probably would not raid in beta.
So I want to put something out. How many attempts do you think it took for Limit, who happened, if you guys weren't aware, which I'm sure everyone at this point's aware, Limit's the one that ended up winning the world first. How many attempts did they try on their last boss?
Man,
I think they were in
well,
the
I know
200. I think they were in the
Yeah.
200 boss before that, so probably like 300.
it took them 2 or 3 days to do it, right?
Looks like they got to the 4th day so yeah, I think it was 4 or 5 days.
Yeah, I'd say like 300 is not unrealistic.
292 pulls.
That was a pretty good guess. Yeah.
Yeah. How
Nice
many
guess on
attempts
that
did it take to Nyaloth the last boss? Anyone know for N'Zoth?
Well, that one was probably 100 because I think they did it on the first day, right?
If I remember, I thought that I think there was quite a bit of time where it wasn't possible, or there was some bugs in it. So I'm not really sure what an accurate count
Oh,
is.
true. Yeah.
So for Limit, the one who was able to kill this one first, their last attempt on N'Zoth took them 274 attempts.
Oh, so pretty close. Okay.
Yeah. But I could not imagine that. I know that I raided with Loki back in Mr. Pandaria, and just what was the boss called? The dogs? The dogs. First boss of I forgot the raid's name.
Mogashin Vaults.
Thank you, Mogashan Bolts. I have a picture where there's just corpses littered on the floor. You could not see the ground with how many bodies were on the floor on that one. And I think that took us over the course of several different raid days that took us in order to down them.
We weren't all the best geared for just jumping into the raid, so
Yeah, I think a lot of us were new to raid too.
yeah.
So
Yeah, I think there's a big kind of roadblock for people that want to have a chance at World First. When I first started playing this game, World First seemed like something that like you could get just by being good,
right.
and that's a big part of it. You have to be really good to get World First because you're attempting these raid bosses before you have gear.
Like you're literally relying on chance and the amount of times you're gonna run something.
Yes. But that being said, is like their gear is still way above what most people have at this point in the game.
Oh yeah.
And that brings me to the barrier of entry here. And the barrier of entry is gold. And actual funding, money, real cash. Because as you know, there's a lot of drama going on of real cash being exchanged for some of these. And that has been going on before, I'm sure. They just happened to get caught this time. But I think that investment is a huge barrier to average players and average guilds.
Oh, hold on. I need to recap something. I need to go back real quick. Okay,
Sure.
So I gave you bad information. So the Denathrius kill came after 143 pulls. It was their Stone Legion generals that took them 274.
Yeah, I knew that one was insane.
Yeah. So 143 pulls compared to their Stone Generals, the 292.
Wow.
Yeah, I wanted to correct myself there.
Yeah, no, that's a ton. But yeah, I think that the finance portion of things is a huge barrier to most people, and
yeah,
there's a lot of like I mentioned before we started the podcast today. There's the partnership with a boosting community to bring in this gold for their raid pushing.
Now, who was teaming up with that?
It was Method, and there was another boosting community. I don't remember, honestly, what the community was.
Which it surprises me that Method's getting into that.
Yeah, it was Nova boosting.
With all the kind of controversies they've had in the past, It's
Yeah, and boosting,
that has its
I think
own controversies.
it's kind of a shady thing.
Yeah.
Carrying
Well,
people in
there was
WoW has
the
been a thing since day one.
well, if I'm not sure if you remember the Gallywix community back in BFA.
Well, yeah, but they recently got into some trouble with one of the major guilds, if I recall correctly,
Well,
for
they
real
had
money
gotten
transfers.
yeah, they had gotten most of everyone that was doing it had gotten banned
Hmm.
from the Gallywix community. I have a couple friends who were actually boosting people in the Gallywix community, and
Yeah.
they got out of it once they started hearing word of what was going on,
Hmm.
and they pulled out of it. And next thing you know, everyone from that was in there had gotten banned. So they got pretty
Yeah.
lucky.
Yeah. I I, I think that is lucky.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Do you
I
have any
think
feelings on the boosting, Loki?
Um, I don't know what the extent of it is, so no real comment. I
yeah,
don't know
boosting.
how.
Oh, sorry about that. Go ahead, man.
No, no, that's fine. I don't know how much they actually gain from it. I mean, if they really wanted to stop it, what they just buy BOEs? I'm assuming.
Yeah, at that point, right?
Yeah, and that's kind of how they're gearing for a lot of these as well. They're buying those, week one 190 BOEs to really push into content hard, and you get the 190 BOEs, and then you can push higher keys. You can cap out on the item level that's available, then you can push into raids, start getting that gear as well. It's a race to gearing for World First, really. Um, but the boosting, like I said, that's been a thing since day one. Like there have always been boosts in WoW and vanilla. Like
Oh
you'd
yeah.
see mages all the time selling carries. That's
Well,
all.
in
That's always been
classic,
the
you
thing.
see that still.
Yeah. Yep. And that's just an MMO. That's like one of the core facets of MMOs. Honestly, is it's like a meme
And I
where you're
think
just
the
over
big
leveled.
thing that you see now is now that we have the looking for group function, you see it so much more prevalent because you're
Yep.
actively looking for groups to run content with. And right when you see a group to run content with, it's, hey, follow my Twitch channel and I may pick you to run this. Hey, pay us this much and we'll run it. There's a lot
And
of different things and you see it, and I kind of gotten to the point where I just gloss over it mostly because I make my own groups now.
yeah, I'm 100% okay with carries. Like I said, I think that's part of the game, and that builds a good community. What tears apart the community, however, is outsourcing those carries and outsourcing those activities for personal gain. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, well, I don't want to follow every streamer that advertises that they're doing carries. Like, no,
Yes.
and that I
Which I'm
think,
actually still following a streamer that I did that for back in BFA, and I have not
uh
unfollowed him.
yeah, and that's the thing that I don't like is when people are like, hey, um, give me a follow and then maybe you'll get a chance to do this. It's
Yes,
like,
that
no, like
bothers
that
me.
doesn't help
Which
anyone.
I believe I
That's
was
just
talking
helping
to you
yourself.
about that, was that you would see these people that advertise their Twitch channels in trade chat and things like that. It's like, hey, come watch me, come follow me. And I don't know what it is about it. Is that shameless plugging just it hurts like in a weird way. It's almost like a sad cringe.
Yeah, I don't like it. And those, you get a different following too. It's not good for the streamer either. 9 times out of 10. And the reason being is that like you get these followers, but I'll call them like non-native. Whereas native
Yeah.
followers are the ones that just stumble upon your screen or your stream, and they're like, wow, like this is really good content. I love this streamer. I love the things that they're putting out. I'm going to follow this person and I'm going to interact with this person. Whereas people that get streamers or that follow streamers from trade chat, they follow these people and they're just like, okay,
You're gonna
where am I
probably
going to
get
get what's for
trolls,
me? Yeah.
or you're
And
gonna
then I'm
get
going to
someone
leave.
that's trying to get something out for themselves.
Exactly. And you really don't gain anything. Nobody gains anything because you follow them, you don't get carried. And then guess what? The streamer doesn't get anything either because those people don't continue to follow them once they don't get carried.
Yeah.
So nobody wins. It just clutters up trade chat. Same thing with real money transfers. Nobody gains a benefit from that. Like, and it breaks apart the community because there's no reason for communication at that point. It's like a money transfer. It's all about the money. It's not about the community.
Yeah.
And it really breaks down kind of the core of what makes MMOs special.
So I do want to get into our last topic because we actually running short on time.
Mhm.
Is our raid. I wanted to save this for like the last thing. It was so much fun. We actually just finished our raid last night. We ended up doing 6 out of 10, I believe, last
Yeah.
night. And it was almost with a full group, almost full guild group. Like I was literally pushing it to try to get people out and run less people just to have a full guild because we brought in pugs and all the pugs that we brought in got the gear.
Literally. Yeah.
Yeah.
Including
The-
the one for the last boss that came
Yeah.
in for one boss, got a cloak and left.
Yep.
Because the raid was over.
Yeah. So how was your feelings about last night? Like how did it go in your opinions? I want to start with Loki first.
It went fine. I mean, the pugs weren't bad either. I mean, they made mistakes, but especially the demon hunter. It was his first time, but he didn't make mistakes more than once on any mechanic.
Yeah.
It was nice having mostly the full group.
It was nice to have everyone in comms, I think, was the biggest thing. Which I think at the same time we still got to work on like clearing comms like during bosses.
Yeah.
But for the most part, like it was awesome. How about you, Zach? What's your feeling?
I thought it was really good. I'm happy with how well the guild performed for sure. And the pugs, I mean, there was some funny stuff going on, you know. The disengage by the Boomy was hilarious.
The disengage.
for the
What was
fact
it?
that
He disengaged his beam onto someone, right? And then
Yeah,
he
he-
disengaged something else.
Killed the healer. Yeah.
Yeah.
But overall, like I think they performed well, and as a group, which is the most important part, I think we performed well. Cons is the thing, you know. I think it was fair. Like, yeah, they were a little bit cluttered when we were, you know, preparing for bosses, but
Oh,
for the
that
most
wasn't the
part, it
bother.
was like,
It was some I know
during the
during
fights,
certain
it was pretty clear.
Yeah, during certain bosses we could do with a little less, but overall,
Yeah.
like it's not something to complain about. It's just one of those things that you kind of point out.
Yeah, and honestly, like, I don't think it caused any problems, and I think it's good that we're all like talking and joking, and like, I prefer a raid environment that's more chill. It's the same way I work when I was in management positions, you know.
Yeah,
As long as the work's getting done and like people are doing the right thing, I'm more relaxed, and I like that. And I think people perform better when they're under less stress and when they're having fun, because in the end, that's the point of the game.
Now I do want to hear what is your ultimate raid horror story that you've had.
Well, can we go to Loki for that one, and I'll try and think of mine.
Yeah.
Sure.
But-
Yeah.
Yeah, we invited this warlock. I think his name was King.
Oh, dude, that guy's so bad.
He got one of our people killed before a boss just to boost his DPS.
Which it boosted his DPS quite a bit.
So warlocks need to parse, though. That's the thing.
He got to pad the
For those of
meters.
you that don't know, for those of you that don't know, Pancakes is the name of my warlock. So Loki's not just blasting some random. But
So
I mean,
for me, I actually have a few of mine, but I'll name one. And it was a mistake that I ended up doing that I think to this day I don't live down. I actually kind of want to touch on two of them. So we were running, which one was it? The pheromones, Loki. What rate is that?
Heart
Heart of Fear, right?
Mop.
Was it hard? Yeah. So there's a boss where he has a mechanic that he puts pheromones on a target, and that target has to stay away. If he touches another target, pheromones gets passed. And the entire time, I believe he's running away from a mob that's attracted to the pheromones, right? Or the boss. He's kiting the boss. And he was about to get killed when me being a priest and me being me was, I'm going to save the raid. I got this. So I life gripped him to me. It popped pheromones and wiped the raid. And I'm
So
just, yeah, not a
those were
proud
good
moment.
raids, though. Those were good
Yeah,
raids.
I love those raids. So we had that one, and then it was another one during Mugushan Vaults. It was
Spirit
who?
Kings.
Oh, Kings. And did I die to this, or did I died to this, right?
If you died or not.
Yeah, so it was when he's doing his he stops for a moment and he does an AoE. And if you sit in the AoE, you die. And I believed I stopped moving because I had to scratch my nose. And I either died or something happened, but I think I died. And everyone just
Yeah.
couldn't figure out what happened.
Worse than that, because you don't just die, you get pinned to the ground and you have to get
Yeah.
freed.
Yeah, I think my horror story. I have two really, and they're not quite like mechanical horror stories, but one of them is just N'Zoth. That's all I'm gonna say. Like I never.
Okay,
I wasn't
now
in a
it
guild. I didn't play
depends.
BFA much.
Are you looking at N'Zoth LFR? Or are you looking at N'Zoth with a group of people that are kind of talking to each other?
This is LFR because N'Zoth.
Oh,
in
no.
my
I've
opinion,
never cleared it in LFR.
I haven't either. But I didn't have a community. I wasn't playing with a community at all in BFA. I didn't play BFA much anyways. So LFR was all I did. I'd log on for a little bit, do LFR, and then I'd leave. Right,
A
and basically
little
to try
bit.
and get a shot at a weapon or something like that, and that's it. I never. The closest I got was like 17%.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, it was the worst LFR boss I've ever experienced, and I don't plan on even doing LFR in this expansion.
Okay,
but,
so I have a funny story about LFR.
yeah,
I did LFR this week of the first 3 bosses. Well, it's not the first boss. It's Huntsman, and then I didn't do the other 2
kinda
bosses.
weird.
So I know it's
Kinda
Huntsman.
weird.
So I went in, and I went to go do Huntsman just because I'm like, oh, I could use the gear. And then I realized the gear was less of the item level than I had already. So there was literally no point for me to be in there. So we get to the pack before Huntsman, before the gate opens. You have to
Yeah.
kill everything before the gate opens. One of the mobs becomes invulnerable, where he just starts evading. Could not reset it. And he just sat there and evaded, and you could not open the gate. Everyone in LFR left.
So my last like horror story was this is back from Wrath, right? When Death Knights first came out, and we went into Tempest Keep, right? Everybody's still trying to get
Yep.
Ashes of Alar. At that point, still a really, really rare mount, like exceptionally rare. Well, we get in there. First time I ever saw it drop, and only the second time I've ever seen it drop since I've played this game. The second
I
time
have
I
it.
saw it drop was for me when I got it on my
Yeah.
own. Well,
Not
the-
anyone
the-
giving it to you or anything.
yeah. Well, everybody hated DKs. I don't know if y'all remember, like,
Yeah, I do remember those days.
but the newest hero class always gets the most hate. Well, the DK won Ashes of Alar
Oh, God.
and then left, like just disappeared, didn't talk to anyone, just was out of there. And I've never been. Man, I was pissed. I was
Yeah,
so
I would
mad.
imagine. Yeah, that would
Because it took
would
a full group at that point to run that raid.
Yeah.
It took a pretty large number of people to run it.
Oh, that sucks.
Yep. And that's how I felt last night when that DK got that clip.
We did hit a point where I was trying to give a ring away. I had them roll and everything, and then realized I had to have 2 rings of that item level in order to trade it off, and I only had 1 of that item level, so it wouldn't let me trade it. So that felt bad. I had to turn it into an eternal crystal in front of everyone.
Feels bad, man.
Yeah, it sucked. But no, anyone have anything they want to end on?
I don't know. Thanks for coming along, Loki. It was good having your input on this stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's great having you, man. But, you know, as always, we'll end it here. So I'd just like to thank everyone for coming out. As always, stay humble, stay amazing. I love you guys. We'll be back on with next episode next Monday. Yeah, we're gonna be trying to do these every Monday now, and we're gonna be having them post on Tuesday for basically anyone that is bored during the downtime of WoW, because those times have been going longer than usual. But from our family to yours, we love you guys and take care.